What's up, guys? Welcome to MXA's Versus video series. This is personally my favorite series we got. Today, we're putting the 2022 Yamaha YZ125 two-stroke, the all-new bike, up against the Husqvarna TC125 two-stroke for 2022. These are two popular bikes, two bikes that are a blast to ride on the track, and I'm super excited to shake both of these bikes down today, do some lap time comparisons, and see which one is the best bike. It has been a fun day testing the 2022 YZ125, the all-new bike, up against the 2022 Husky TC125 two-stroke. So we brought out the Husky. We're early in on our testing phases for the new YZ125, the bike that's been updated a bunch, and we had to bring out one of the Austrian brands to compare with it to see how it stacks up. Everybody wants to know if the YZ125 is a KTM killer, and well, we didn't have a KTM in our stables. KTM hasn't given us a new 125 yet, but they did give us a Husky 125, which is very similar to the KTM. It does have the lowered suspension platform. The airbox is a little more closed off than the KTM, so it's a little more, I would say, sluggish and a little more mellow on the power band than the KTM is. So the suspension settings are a little bit softer than the KTM is. It's very similar to the KTM and a great comparison to the YZ125, and that's what we have in this video. So the Husky TC125, it's been the same for quite a few years. It got the lowered suspension platform that all of the Husky models got in 2021. That crossed over into 2022. It's got updated WP air forks that came in 2021 that made the air forks and the suspension work a lot nicer and a lot more plush on the Huskies. Last year, that comes over into 2022 as well. As far as the engine, this is the same engine that Husky and KTM have been using for a while now. They do have obviously a lot more updates than Yamaha has over the past 10 and 15 years. In the recent years, this Husky TC125 has been very similar. It also comes with the power valve that we really like adjusting. That's one plus. The Husky TC125 is very strong in the mid-range and high RPM, and that's a plus for it as well. Before we get into how they performed on the track and the different aspects, we're talking about bodywork, suspension, engine, and how the handling actually worked on the track. Let's talk about a few of the different specs that are different between the YZ125 for 2022 and the Husky 125. So starting out with the price, the new YZ125 jumped up $300 more from last year's price to $6,899, where the Husky TC125 is quite a bit more expensive at $7,599. Talking a little bit about the weight, the Husky TC weighs in at 192 pounds on the scale, and we haven't got the new YZ on our scales yet. Last year's YZ125 weighed 201 pounds on the scale, and talking to Yamaha, with a few different aspects that were added to the new bike, they think that this bike is about a pound or two heavier than it was last year, putting in about 202 or 203, but we can't quite confirm that one. The carburetor is different. The carburetor on the Husky comes with a Mikuni TMX 38. Last year's YZ125 came with that same carburetor, but now the new YZ125 has a Kian carburetor. The spring rates are also quite a bit stiffer on the YZ125. It has a 4.2 fork spring and also a 4.8 shock spring, so it's stiffer front and rear than it was last year on the Yamaha, where the Husky comes with a 3.9 spring on the rear shock, a lot softer, and it has air forks that you can adjust with a hand pump at the track to suit your weight and riding preference. So quite a bit softer on the Husky as well. Also talking about the tires, the Husky comes with the Dunlop MX33s, while the new YZ125 comes with the Bridgestone Battlecross X20 tires. Now let's get into how the Husky and Yamaha work on the track and what they feel like. So starting off with body work, and handling and really kind of the feel that you get when you sit on the bikes. We've talked about this in our other YZ125 videos. The new bike has a completely different bodywork. It's got new plastics, it's got a new subframe, and it's got a new seat, and that new seat has really updated the YZ125, where before you really used to sit into the seat on the YZ, where now it's taller in the middle, lower in the front, makes it so you sit on top of the motorcycle rather than sitting into the motorcycle. It really brings you up a little bit higher on the YZ and makes it a lot more racy and a lot more of a modern feel. The Husky is a lot lower. Why? Well, comes with that lowered suspension platform that I mentioned. Husky is about an inch lower at the seat than the KTM and Gas models are, and that's something that the MXA Wrecking Crew really likes. Being lower to the ground is great for being planted in the corners, great for just having smooth corners. It's great for guys that are shorter, it's easier for them to touch the ground. But even for a taller rider, like me, I'm 6 feet tall, I like the shorter platform better because it is great for handling. It's lower to the ground and just good for getting in and out of corners. Shorter suspension, lower overall platform. With the YZ, it's pretty much the opposite. That new seat brings the rear end a lot taller, and personally, I think with a little more testing, we could get the YZ maybe to sag a little bit more. It's definitely a lot more racy and a big improvement over last year's YZ125. So talking about the suspension and the handling between the two bikes, man, it was surprising to see the YZ125. This thing has jumped way up into being a more race-ready model than it was previously. So last year's YZ125, super soft suspension, soft spring rates, and soft valving. Now they've gone up a spring rate front and rear, and the suspension on that KYB suspension on the YZ, and it is a lot stiffer. The valving is a lot stiffer, so the faster you go, it actually holds up better and makes it a lot more of a race-ready bike. Where the Husky, it's softer suspension than the KTM, and it is definitely softer than the Yamaha. It's more plush. Not bad for a lighter rider, it's not bad for a slower rider, but for a pro level rider like me, racing today, going back to back, comparing lap times on the YZ and lap times on the Husky, I was more comfortable with the suspension on the YZ because it's a lot stiffer. So that's really rider preference, rider size, and really the character of who's riding the bike. So that's not really an end all be all, which one's better, which one's worse. I would definitely say the Husky would fit a wide range of riders, where the Yamaha is definitely stiffer and great for faster riders. Now let's dive into the most exciting part about the new YZ125, the engine. The engine was the biggest change that the YZ125 got for 2022. People love the suspension, the SSS forks, and we like the frame as well. This frame has been on this bike since 2005, and it's a popular handling motorcycle that has little complaints. The updated engine has made this bike a lot stronger. It's more of a race-ready mod bike, something that faster riders are going to be much more appreciative of. Picks up stronger in the mid-range, and it pulls longer in the high RPM range as well. So that's something that's really exciting about it. Comparing it to the Husky, personally, I thought that the Husky was going to be quite a bit stronger, but I was impressed with the YZ125, how it was able to compare and how it was able to hold up down the straightaways racing against the Husky 125. The YZ125, we did have to mess with the jetting. We went quite a bit leaner. If you check out our MXA tested video, I talk more about that, but we went leaner on the jetting. We also added a tooth to the rear sprocket. We went up from a 49 to a 50 tooth rear. That made the bike to where you had to shift a lot more down the straightaways. You're going up and down through the gears. You're getting low in the gears, second gear through the corners, but then shifting fourth down the straightaways and shifting a lot. So that's one thing. On the Yamaha, you had to shift a lot, where with the Husky, it's got a broad power band that you didn't have to shift as much in. Previously, Yamaha was more of an average beginner novice engine, where the Husky was more of a race-ready engine, KTM more of a race-ready engine. Now, the Yamaha has gotten a lot closer to that Husky in the engine department, and I was really surprised to see it. So comparing the YZ125 and the Husky TC125 on the dynos, the new bike is definitely closer to the Husky than it was before, but it wasn't able to beat it out. The new YZ125 is 1 horsepower stronger than it was last year, and it gained about a ½ foot-pound of torque over last year's model as well, but still leaves it about 2 horsepower below the Husky TC125 and below the TC125 on torque as well. Going leaner on the carburetor and adding the tooth to the rear sprocket were both things that helped pro level riders, but if you want to be able to ride the same gear longer and pull second in the corners easier, running a 49 tooth, which is stock, or even going to a 48 tooth on the rear sprocket, those would be better for holding your gears longer and having a little more revability on the YZ125. So after about 2 days of testing on the YZ125, this thing is still new. They've changed the engine, they changed the transmission ratios, they changed a lot of things in this. So we're gonna have to take a little more time to really perfect it and figure out exactly which mods benefit it most and which jetting works best for us here in Southern California and all that good stuff. But in its current setting, with the lean jetting that we have in it right now, and with the extra tooth that we have on the rear sprocket, we're running a 50 tooth on the rear, the YZ125 demands a fast left foot. You gotta be shifting that thing up and down a lot. Pro level riders, it's okay. Experienced riders who ride 125s all the time, you're used to shifting a lot, and that's what we did here on the YZ125, while the Husky was easier to hold gears longer and was pulling stronger. Really at the end of the straightaway, it was pulling a little bit stronger, where the YZ125 had a lot of grunt with that extra tooth on the rear sprocket, a lot of pull coming right out of the corner. So overall, a lot of fun going back to back on those two bikes. But the most exciting part of the day was the lap time battle. And this is something that I really look forward to in our Versus videos. A disclaimer, my lap times, a pro level rider, a test rider that jumps on a lot of different bikes, my lap time and the end result of what I do isn't always an indication of what everybody's gonna do. Somebody might be better on the Yamaha, somebody might be better on the Husky, somebody might be better with softer or stiffer suspension. For me, going all out on both bikes today, it was a blast, and it was a true comparison of me really pushing my limits and seeing which bike was the best for a pro level rider in its stock form. Personally, with the Husqvarna and KTM, and with how strong their 125 engines have been for the last few years, and just the difference between KTM and Yamaha, I thought I would be faster on the Husky. It was not so, and I was pretty stoked to see it. The Yamaha YZ125 beat the Husky today. I was 7/10 of a second faster on the Yamaha YZ125 than I was on the Husky 125. So I went out there on the Yamaha first. I put in a 2:06.2 lap time, and I was happy with it. I got a clean lap in. I made sure when I went out on the Husky that I hit the same lines and really tried to get another clean lap in without any lappers. I went out on the Husky, I was a 2:07.9. Incredible. I was over a second and a half slower on the Husky than I was on the YZ125, and I was blown away by it. And because of the sheer amount of time, a second and a half, I mean, that's a long time on a motocross track. And for me, my lap times are usually fairly consistent, so I said, hey, I gotta give it another shot on the Husky, see if it was a fluke or if the Yamaha was really that much better for me today. I went all out on the Husky, another good lap in, same lines, pushing as hard as I could. I dropped my lap time by a second, so quite a bit better the second time around on the Husky. I was still 7/10 of a second slower than I was on the YZ125. So overall, very exciting news to share with you guys. Yamaha YZ125 versus Husky TC125. Josh Mosman was faster on the Yamaha today, and I'm happy to say it. Yamaha put a lot of time, money, effort, and energy into their new YZ125, and to be honest, first experience on it, I thought that it was a little bit sluggish off the bottom end, and I thought that it was quite a bit different than last year's bike. The last year's 2021 YZ125 had such a smooth throttle response and such an easy to ride character. I was hoping that that would transfer into this new model. The 2022, a lot stronger in the mid-range, a lot stronger in the high RPM range. Not quite as connected on the bottom, but it shows in the lap time comparison and the overall, racing head-to-head, going back-to-back on each bike. The new YZ125 engine is stronger, and it was 7/10 of a second faster for me today, so that was a lot of fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Versus video. Obviously these two bikes are very different, but they are great for different riders. So we're excited to continue testing on the YZ125 and continue to provide you guys with information on these bikes. If you haven't seen our other YZ125 videos, be sure to check out motocrossactionmag.com and our YouTube channel. We have a full MXA tested video on the 2022 YZ125 where I talk more in depth about the engine, the suspension, and exactly what was changed on that bike. If you like this video, be sure to click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, because that lets us know that we're moving in the right direction. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.